In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a patriotic sunflower from Design Space with a few changes. Click on Images and search for Patriotic Sunflower. The first one in the top left is the one that I want, so I'm going to click on it and then click on Add to Canvas. I'm going to make it the size that I want to cut it out, which is 11.5 inches because that's the largest that I can cut out on a 12 by 12 mat. And then I'm going to zoom out of the Design Space canvas so that I have a little bit more space to work with. And then let's begin with the changes. First, I'm selecting the red layer and the black layer, and I'm clicking on Duplicate, and then Align and Center, and then I'm going to click on Slice. What Slice is doing is it's going to get rid of the black area that is not over top of any red. It also created a red area, so I deleted that as well. And then I'm selecting both layers again, and I am duplicating it one more time, and I'm going to weld because when I sliced, it cut out the black lines from the red paper like you saw in that brief pop-up. And so I wanted to get rid of those so that when I adhere the black to the red, I don't have cutouts. I'm going to repeat those steps again with the white and the blue layers, so you'll see me do all the same steps on each layer. There are a few additional things I would like to mention about what I'm doing. After I weld the layers together and remove the cutouts, I'm taking the black layer and the colored layer and I'm grouping them. The reason why I want to group them is so that as I move things around, those layers don't come apart. The other thing you're seeing me do is right click and then click on Send to Back. This is because every time I weld a layer, it brings it to the top or to the front, and they don't necessarily belong in that spot. So I'm sending them to back so that they are in their proper space, so that as I'm putting everything back together, I can see and make sure that it looks exactly how I want it to. On this blue layer, I'm using that circle with an arrow to turn the blue to off-center it a little bit so that you can see those blue petals. Now I'm going to take this circle with the stars, because instead of having a circle with the stars cut out of it, what I actually want to have is the stars and no circle. So I'm clicking on the Shapes button, adding a circle to the mat, and then I'm resizing it so that the two match up. I went and copy and pasted the exact size of the blue circle so that I could make the gray circle that same size, and then clicked Slice, and now I'm removing the two excess layers. And just putting it back where it needs to be so I can get a full picture of what this looks like. And then I am going to group the whole thing together. So again, I can move it easily without all of the layers coming apart. Okay, so everything is done. Now it's time to click on Make It. I'm quickly reviewing how many sheets of each color I need, and then I'm going to click on Continue and select my material. I'm working with cardstock and vinyl for this project, but I'm starting with cardstock. Now let's move over to the machine and get this started. Okay, so here I have all my materials I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using black vinyl, cardstock, glue, and a weeding tool. And of course, my trusty brayer. Cannot forget that. The first layer I'm cutting is the white layer. I'm using my brayer to ensure the cardstock has a firm hold on the mat. You are going to see a very sped up version of cutting all of the cardstock and vinyl. So sit back and enjoy with me the dream that this is really how fast you can cut out a Cricut project. Okay, now that I have everything cut out, it's time to weed the vinyl. I'm going to do the first sheet at a slower speed so that you can see a little bit better what I'm doing, and then I will speed up the other two sheets so we can get through it. So weeding is removing any of the excess vinyl that you do not want to appear in your final project. So you can see me doing here is taking out the center of the petals and just leaving the detail. That's weeding. I did have a little bit of trouble weeding this vinyl. It wasn't too difficult, but I did use a new brand of vinyl that I've never used before. I typically use Cricut. This brand is HTV Runt. It actually performed really well as I used it through the project, but I think what I needed to do was cut with a little bit more pressure because there were a lot of pieces where it seemed like it had mostly cut through, but maybe was still sticking together just a tiny bit. So in the future, when I use this particular brand, I need to remember that I need to add more cutting pressure. Now what I'm going to do is cut the sheets into individual leaves so that I can more easily apply the vinyl to the red leaves. First, I'm going to stick the transfer tape on my shirt a couple times to make it a little bit less sticky. I'm doing this because I'm adhering to cardstock and I don't want to rip the paper with the transfer tape. So that will take away some of the stickiness when I put it on my clothing. I'm going through each red leaf and adhering the black detail layer to each piece. Once they're done, I will move on and do the same with the blue and the white layers. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a spoiler alert right up front. I had a ton of issues with getting this black vinyl onto the blue and white layers. You'll see here in a minute as I'm lining up the black layer, I don't get it aligned properly. Whoops. That is where a lot of my issues came from with the blue layer. I have my vinyl layer on my transfer tape, which is what I always use to put vinyl on things. This is my first time, however, trying the butcher paper or parchment paper method so that I can get my two layers lined up. The tricky thing with this image is that not all the leaves are the same, so I had to keep on turning the layers until I could find exactly how they matched up, so that took me a minute. And then after I get it lined up, I get it lined up pretty well. But then when I went to take off the transfer tape, I thought maybe I had picked the wrong layer because the blue layer is a little bit smaller than the white layer. But as you can see here, as I'm lining it up, it actually is the correct layer. You can see that I get it lined up, but I got off just a little bit where I wasn't looking as I was adhering it, which is what created all my issues later on. As I removed the butcher paper and get the vinyl on the flower, it's going well for a minute here on this right side, and then I started having issues pretty quickly after I got those first few tips laid down. This is when I started wondering in my head if I had picked the wrong layer, because as I get further to the left of the flower, I start to see all of the misalignment, and I am trying to fix them before I remove the transfer tape. But it just got to the point where I needed to just get everything laid down and then fix it after removing the transfer tape. I used my True Control knife and cut portions of the vinyl, got it realigned, and restuck the lines where they needed to be. Hang tight with me for a minute as you see me do this, and then we'll move forward onto the white layer. This is another one of those times where, as I see it moving so quickly, I wish it had moved that fast in real life. That would have been nice. Okay, so as I started the white layer, I was bound and determined to not make any mistakes on this one. So what you can see me doing here is trying to line up the petals and just really like double, triple, quadruple check, make sure everything aligns, making sure that I've got the right size of the black layer for the white layer. And I realized that I did. So as you can see here, like I see that it's the right size. I'm thinking, great, now we can be able to see how well this parchment paper method that I keep seeing all over social media works, and I can redeem myself from the blue layer. So probably not so much of a spoiler alert, since I kind of mentioned it earlier. I did get it pretty well lined up. It's difficult to see as I'm peeling off the butcher paper, but it was off alignment again. Luckily, not as bad as the blue layer, because, you know, again, it's not that easy to tell here with this white layer. I did try to do a little bit of fixing again before I pulled it off. And then it just was another one of those things where I decided that I would just fix it the same method. I did the blue layer with my X-Acto knife. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time with that. I'm just gonna have this sped up so that you can see I'm fixing it, and then we will move on. My vision for this project was I really wanted it to pop and come to life. I really liked the patriotic look. I didn't want it to just lay flat, kind of like, you know, it did when all the layers were just laying there on the table. So I decided to use a tool and curl all of the petals to give it a little bit more dimension and just not lay so flat. Now that all the curls are done, I'm going to apply the stars to the middle of the sunflower. One thing to note really quick as you see me finishing up all the stars, I didn't do a super great job at spacing the stars as I would have liked, so that's definitely something in the future. I will pay closer attention to my spacing before I actually lay the glue on it so that it's not fixable anymore. Once I got the red petals all glued on, I was ready to call this project done and move on. And then I realized that if I put this in a frame, it may not stay curled easily. And I was, especially if I tried to glue it to a backing. So I went into my kitchen and I was looking around and I found a mason jar ring that is super old and rusty and really needed to be thrown away, and so I decided to use it in the middle to give it that little bit of height that it would need to keep those curls. I decided not to use another piece of paper, and I am just using the backing of the insert that came in the frame to glue the mason jar to. I'm using a 12 by 12 shadow box. It's not a super deep one, so it was perfect for this project. To find a list of what I used for this project, please check out the video description. Thanks. Thanks for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you have questions, please be sure to comment. See you next time.